Well, they all had stuff. No.
I'll be here. I need to rewatch Seinfeld.
Oh, I know, it's been.
It's been a long time. I love the, I always think like every time I see something with Snickers, I always think of like the episode where they all eat a Snickers before.
And, I pulled this out on somebody from last week. It takes somebody sneeze. So good looking.
Of course, every year, Festivus, everyone gets curious. Do you want to listen to them?
No.
You want to go? That was just a- I don't know. I said, I think I'm gonna grab. Do you want to?
What do you do for?
Bill Thursday or Friday night this week.
How are you?
No. Are you gonna go to the?
You put some like glitter on it.
This is pretty.
This is doing good.
You're
Right. How are you?
Just yesterday, so that my Veronica's got my name.
Set?
Veronica's got my name for the church, yeah.
Left her alone.
Been out and about.
I was selling tickets at Sacred Heart College.
You were church voting.
8 o'clock mass, 10 o'clock mass. I need it.
Don't we all?
Yeah.
It'll be your time for me. So I guess I better. I mean, that would be good either that you lie.
Yes. Forgot I did this from my neck. And then there's always construction and you're like.
It's just, so apparently, it's like anybody could put.
Do you want to put the running?
There you go. Good sparkles in that.
You're usually on your way.
So
actually, you can.
I am.
There's another one.
There's always another one.
Ooh, she knows you.
It is.
Oh, yeah, you need to go back and reply to that. Oh, yeah. Bring it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I'd like a new building.
Good. Love it.
Cool building.
Yeah, they did.
Always that. When I walked in, I expect to see bright. Well,
I think it's only during the day, or like, is it Jordan's?
that's right. That's how are you? Not going anywhere for a while. Hey.
Oh, David's well, listen. My.
Oh,
Really years ago, I first knew you.
Okay. You need to grab something?
yeah.
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 Yeah, exactly. And then the heat comes, right, so your point. Yeah, and we went to a lot of. Open air. It was like. I feel like the safest. Water tank, so. Give us 4 days.
Okay.
How are you doing? Doing good. Germany's not. Yeah. Sounds cool.
Young, vibrant. Yeah.
That's all.
Yeah. 3 days.
Oh, nerve wracking, yeah, cause it's
Regular.
long time. So this got how Mary.
I know.
Well.
Yeah, so I was happy, like, okay, as soon as they said, all right, let's clear, you're like, no, let's go down now, yeah. Yeah, yeah, absolutely, yeah, and it's cool because of different experiences, like, decide to drive up on.
Look forward to my routine. Yeah. Long days.
Well, they'll know. To my house.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's cool. Works.
It's today, right?
Thank you all for attending. Appreciate it very much. Pretty good. So, we have someone different from our district advisory board run the meeting every month. And, this time Jennifer Salvo is gonna run it. She's very looking forward to this. Encouraging her.
I think I try to trade with every person here. Okay, so first, so straight into the approval. agenda. Okay, so we're gonna go for approval of the agenda, all.
I move we approve.
A second.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Okay. Great, okay. Next, we're gonna go into approval of the minutes from July 7th. Has everyone had a chance to review those? Can I get a motion?
Move the paper.
All four?
Aye.
All opposed, same sign? Okay, okay, now we're moving on to public agenda. We have no items scheduled. Are there anybody from the crowd here who would like to speak on the public agenda prior? Okay. We have to do anything with sound so.
Keep moving.
Okay, we're gonna move on. Let's go. Okay, now we're gonna go to a board agenda. So any updates, issues and reports?
I'll give an update. Our city council meeting will not be tomorrow morning at 9. It's our yearly nightly meeting. So we're gonna move to the night, but there's even more change. Since tomorrow is the primary election, moved it to Thursday. So Thursday evening at 6, love to have you attend City Hall. We'll go over another iteration of the budget. You have an opportunity to give your input on the budget. So if you you get a chance to speak up to 5 minutes. So would love to see many District 5 people there as possible. So secondly, just so you know, been working on a plan to activate. Wichita has over 1,850 empty lots. Not all of them are buildable, but a lot of them are buildable. So, but how do we activate those lots for houses and duplexes? Mainly on 135 and the poorer neighborhoods. There's some in District 5 too. But how do we activate those lots? Been working on that. Continue to work on that. We got another meeting on the 20th. Hopefully, Troy will be there and stuff. So we hopefully figure out a plan to where we can incentivize maybe some smaller builders. Working hard. So any other questions for me? Russell?
Did I hear you say our yearly evening one? I thought it was a little bit more regularly. Quarterly, thank you.
If I said that,
Maybe I heard.
no, it's quarterly.
It is quarter. It's quarter.
So Thursday at 6. Anybody else? Questions, concerns? Okay,
Is there any other updates from any board members? No. Okay. Next we have a District 5 appointee, Randy. Timish. That's good. Yes. We'll report on the Sustainability Integration Board.
for those of you who don't know, the appointees, all of my appointees, there's like 13 of them. Once a year, they come and I've asked them to give a report. I think it's good that we kind of know what they're doing, what they're up to. And I think it's good for you to hear that too. So Annie's going to give the report today. I told her to keep it under an hour. Just kidding.
Well, my first draft was about an hour. So,
That's it?
Yeah,
You narrowed it down.
yes, I did.
Okay, good.
I mean. Okay. Okay, all right. Okay, thank you. I'm Randy Timish and I represent District 5 on the City of Wichita Sustainability Integration Board. And thank you, JV, for your trust in me and nominating me for the role. The Sustainability Integration Board, often called SIB, was created by the City Council on September 7th, 2021. Our goal is to help integrate sustainability into all parts of the city government. That includes how we use energy, manage waste, plan neighborhoods, and prepare for environmental hazards. But sustainability isn't just about the environment. It's about saving money, improving public health, supporting economic growth, and making sure Wichita stays livable for our future generations. Here's a list of who are the members of the board. The SIB meets at 6:15 on the fourth Wednesday of each month in the boardroom at the Advanced Learning Library downtown. All our meetings are open to the public. They either can attend in person or online. Our board includes representatives from each city council district, as well as members who serve on the other boards. And SIB is the only city board that allows members to serve on multiple boards. This helps sustainability show up where it matters in housing, transportation, and our green spaces, water, and neighborhood planning. We are under the Public Works and Utilities, and Gary Jantz is the head of the department. Everybody knows who he is because he's talked a lot about drought. And Lisette Ortega is our coordinator along with Ethan Kershaw. So the official mission is to help to advise the city council and staff on sustainability issues that affects Wichita's long-term livability and economic vitality. Just let's take a look at what it really means in action. So as for energy and economy, since 2022, Wichita has added 24 zero-emission buses to our transit system. City Hall, the fire stations, and the rec centers all have been upgraded to LED lighting, HVAC systems, and low-flow water fixtures. These updates save energy, reduce costs, and helps us taxpayers save money. Climate resilience. NASA satellite data has helped the city identify urban heat islands, areas where parking lots and buildings trap heat. With this data, Wichita can better plan how to cool and protect our vulnerable neighborhoods. And I have more about this later. Waste reduction. The city provides things like tire collection programs and vouchers to use the landfill at no cost. This helps our residents to legally dispose of the trash and decrease illegal dumping. Community engagement. Last spring, Lisette and Ethan gave a number of public talks on water conservation and composting. Another board member and myself organized a community Earth Day celebration at L.W. Clack Park. Equity and affordability. The city partners with the South Central Kansas Economic Development District, I'll get it, to help low-income houses weatherize their homes, thus cutting their energy costs and lessening the pollutants that's released in the air. Of course, we can't do this alone. We collaborate with residents, schools, businesses, and community organizations. So the city has accomplished several goals. One of that was creation of a staff position with the city, dedicated sustainability, and this person was brought on to help identify grants and funding for projects supporting sustainability. But how can a person apply for a grant when you don't have a long-term plan? And therefore, a plan was developed, and it's now called the Community Resilience Plan. And it was developed to guide the efforts of the Sustainability Integration Board as well as the city. So this is the Community Resilience Plan includes some specific goals on economic opportunity, energy efficiency, outreach to underserved neighborhoods. FEMA ranks Wichita's environmental risk as moderate to high, but we don't need any experts to tell us about that because we've been living all these things this last 6 months. We've had all these. This picture happens to be my daughter's neighborhood last spring. So I want to focus a few minutes on extreme heat. It's a big danger. It's one of the biggest dangers to children and pregnant women, seniors, anyone who has a health challenge. In central Wichita, there's more pavement and fewer trees. Temperatures can reach 10 degrees higher than what's reported at the airport. Also, those areas don't cool off at night. And what happens, that puts people, animals, and even our crops, plants, under constant stress. To meet these immediate needs of these residents, our city has designated cooling centers at the city libraries, rec centers, and neighborhood resource centers. Long-term, the city has developed a tree canopy policy. And this is to help plant more trees in hot zones. And the park board bought 1,000 trees last year, and a number of people in the community came together to plant these trees. It was 1,000 of them, and at Alice Wall Memorial Park. So what's next? Drought. And when you start planting trees, drought is a real problem. So the city quit planting trees. So that was very disappointing to me. But now that we got our water, the Cheney's filled up, the city's going to start resuming planting of the trees because now they can water the trees and help care for them. Water conservation has been a priority for the city. In addition to the watering restrictions, our city has offered rebates like for rain barrels, efficient dishwashers, and low flow toilets. The rebate funds are already used up for 2025, but we really do anticipate the city council to okay additional rebates for water efficiency in 2026. They've done it for the last 12 years. So hear me? Okay. So what's next for the Sustainability Integration Board? Well, last month, we voted to fund 4 projects of $10,000 each. These projects focus on education, community involvement, and reducing environmental impact. Project 1, we will purchase 20 air quality monitors to be placed at libraries, neighborhood centers, and the schools to help raise awareness and educate students and families about air quality. And I think this is particularly timely because our air has not been very good the last week. Our second project will be to develop educational materials about composting, weatherization, and recycling. This will help residents to take simple, sustainable actions at home. Our third one is to reduce food waste. And to do this, we plan to purchase refrigerators to be placed in some of the schools. These share fridges will let the students share and donate and access food. The pilot program begins this fall, and we plan an expansion in the spring of 2026. And the last one, the community members can apply for $1,000 mini grants in 2026 to support local projects like hosting a workshop or a website development or other events to support sustainability. So we hope that all these small investments will help empower our community to take part in building a better and more sustainable Wichita. There's upcoming workshops in I think in the fall that Lisette is providing, so that a QR code takes you to more information. You can email sustainability@wichita.gov for more information. And I chose this picture just for you, JP. Thank you. Any questions? I'll try to answer.
Any questions from the board?
Russell's on the committee.
Russell's on our.
I just wanted, and maybe you could speak to this, some people might have questions about the funding for any of these likely projects. The city did provide some initial seed money for Sustainability Integration Board. It'd be wonderful if it became a regular part of the yearly budget, but basically we're grant driven. We have applied for grants. We have another grant application that we're working on. And so, all of this funding, like for the micro grants, for the educational materials, I mean, that's money that's coming from sources other than the city fund.
I have a question on the voucher for landfill. Where do you get that?
It comes out about once a year, and I just keep track on the website. Sometimes social media will advertise that you can get a voucher to go dump at the landfill for free.
I've never heard of that before. I didn't know when you, certain time of year.
It's usually in the spring that they issue those certificates, those vouchers.
Or you just have to keep.
Yeah, I have to keep an eye out.
Okay.
You can contact us at NABCD. My staff passes those out, like the metallurgical construction department.
Okay.
If you look at our website or contact us, they'll get you on the list.
I don't think, as far as I know, nobody we know is even aware of that.
Suzanne may still have some this year.
Yes.
I guess to his point, so my name is Blake Schleier. I've lived in this neighborhood for 35 years. I own 2 local businesses in this neighborhood. A lot of these programs you're speaking about, I've never heard about. They seem like very good programs. There's a lot of business people like me in town that will donate their time to plant the trees. We just need to know the word and what's out there. So I guess my challenge to MADCD would be maybe we could send out some more emails to different business owners around town about these programs, kind of get in front of people backing these programs.
And that's part of what we need to do more of is let the community know what we do, what we can help with. And I'll be more than glad to help with that.
And on the recycling, do you have a place you take recycling or?
Yes, there's places take recycling. It's the Kansas Pro Recycling Center on East Clark, South Wichita.
We go down there and I didn't think it was too much.
A good place for information is our bi-monthly newsletter. So we'll put information in that newsletter. So if you're not on the email list, get on the email list. We include, a lot of times we'll include that information on that.
Okay.
newsletter too.
Are there any other questions for Randy?
No.
No, thank you so much for.
Thank you.
Andy, thank you.
You don't need to do anything for, okay, we're going to move on to staff reports. First, we're gonna start with the police department report. I don't think you're Officer Kimmery, but.
No. Come up and talk.
Yeah, thank you.
Hello there, everyone. I'm Officer Ice, Wichita Police Department. With me here is Officer Fulcher. He is actually taking over for rotation on community policing. He'll be over 11 and 12 beach. If you want to introduce yourself. I'm Officer Fulcher. Been on the department about 10 years now. Things we brought the DAB 5 crime stats, basically some big things in there. We got a lot of reduction. We did have one homicide. We'll pass those out. That was recently on the news. That's still being investigated. Had some rapes that were increased, but overall majority had a decrease, which is what's kind of showing with our trends overall in the city. Let's see here. We did have Second Chance Thursday recently. Last month, I guess now, or in August. Overall, on the Second Chance Thursday, we assisted 125 people with checking for warrants. 54 were served. We had 107 people helped through the DMV, and 23 were able to get restricted license from that assistance in that program. We do have a slated meeting in October for Second Chance Thursday. We'll be sending out social media stuff about it and flyers for that next one coming up sometime in October. Let's see here. Neighborhood Night Out, that is going to be August 12th. Everyone, if that's on your calendar, please put it on there. If you email your community police officers for this area, it's going to be Officer Kimmery and I believe Officer Williams, but you can email any of us or Sergeant Miller, and we will try to make it out to every one of your Neighborhood Night Out events. We'd love to see you guys. So, Lisa, were you able to pull up the crime stat stuff that I could show you, the crime map? Okay. Yeah. Okay, so what I'm gonna go over right now real quick, this is something that's been asked about. So one of the things that's been brought up is a lot of people are wondering what's going on in their neighborhood regarding crime, besides, coming to these meetings that we have, in neighborhood associations. One thing I wanted to show you at wichita.gov, if you go to the departments, you look for the police department, we actually have a crime map through LexisNexis. If you scroll down and you look over here to the left, there will be crime stats. Once you get to the crime stats page, it will actually show you up-to-date stuff. This is updated through June 30th of 2025. I think they need to update that. We're a little behind on that one. But that's overall through the city, just for part 1 crimes. If you scroll down, you'll see some of our stuff about shooting victims and incidents like that, keeping track of that. The big thing I wanted to show everyone is a community crime map, though. If you go down towards the bottom on the crime stats and you click on this, it will take you to a different website, which is through LexisNexis. This is something that is a program that we utilize on the police department. And all you have to do, this is a national based program. I just type in the city. It's very user friendly. Right now you can see it's just filtering everything in the city, but we can change that filter out and choose specific things. So if you're focused on, I'm not going to do everything because that's going to just populate the map like crazy. But we could do, let's see here. Let's do theft. So if I apply that filter, it'll show me all the thefts that are occurring, and then I can break this down into different things like agency layers, shows you beats and everything. It shows also, if you're unsure where your district is or your beat, you can also click on these. I'll apply beats on there. And then we have a time frame up here in the right corner. This is going from July 5th to August 4th, so about a month. So that's why you see so many of these little dots in here. But I have the police beats lined up and you can see where we're having cases in certain areas of theft. It's a very user-friendly thing. If you ever have issues with it, you can reach out to the police department. We can walk you through it. But I think we're gonna start showing this off a little more. It's a very good program to utilize. Because I know a lot of, meetings, they always ask like, hey, can you get us up-to-date stuff? This will show you up-to-date information about what's going on in the city regarding crime stats. Any questions?
Any questions for? Any questions from the public?
No? Okay. Well, thank you guys. We'll leave extra copies of the crime stats too with Teresa here. So thank you guys for your time.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Okay, we're gonna move on to the fire department. Battalion Chief Peck will report on specific concerns in our district.
Hello, I'm John Eck, Battalion Chief, Wichita Fire Department, and I manage the stations out here in your district and some down in DAB 4. I'm a little jealous of his report there. That's pretty nice. We have some similar stuff, but I might talk to our IT people about getting it to where you guys can access it, because it'd be nice for you guys to have all that information. Of course, we don't have as much going on as them. Our call load's a lot lower, but it would be nice for you guys to have that. We do have a DAB report that we put out every month that I can share with you guys. I'll start out with July 4th. We had an extremely quiet July 4th as far as structure fires. Our initial data is showing for that 3rd, 4th, and 5th period that we had 0 structure fires, which is it's coming way down. In 2023, there was like 11 houses that started on fire during that time. Last year we had 1, and this year we didn't have any that were tied to that. So it was unusually quiet. We did have about 1,188 calls come in related to fireworks, which is about the norm for the last 3 years. And then we issued 19 citations. So we had patrols out, and that was last year we issued 34, this year only 19. So I would say, as from our perspective, that the program has been a success the way we're running it. So I'm sure there's other people that might feel differently, or other people that have a different perspective, but from us, it's working out pretty well. A few other things going on. We just graduated some guys for the recruit academy, so we're keeping our numbers where we need them, and we have another academy that started followed up right after that. So we've been running academies which normally run about 12 weeks, and we also will teach an EMT class before that, which I think that runs 8 weeks. So we're constantly monitoring our numbers and keeping where we need to be. Fires for this last month have also been down. Our fire and investigations unit only investigated 12 fire scenes, which those are usually the suspicious fires, arsons, more serious fires. So that's been a little bit lower. District 5 had 1 fire this month up on North Pepperidge, but it just turned out to be a fire in the back of a truck. So some junk was on fire in the back of the truck. A few other things going on. We have a new brush truck that's in Wichita. That's our grassland, wildland firefighting truck. We currently have 4 of those. This will be our 5th. We have 1 at Station 21 in your district, and then Station 17 at Maple and Maze in your district. So you guys are covered pretty well. I imagine this one will go out to the east side somewhere. And we do have 11 fire engines and 1 of the trucks, which is the big ladder truck, ordered. Those are going to be coming in through the end of this year all the way to 2028. So the sooner the better, but that's in the process. And I have just one little story for sometimes we get a win on these deals. We had a person that went code blue out of Spirit, an employee. And if you know how that kind of works, Spirit has their own fire department, and the county is really close there, and the city is really close there, and then we have the EMS. So all the units have to work together there. We have mutual aid agreements that take care of this stuff. But anyway, if we had a guy go cardiac arrest, Spirit Fire started working on him, and this was on June 30th. And then some of our crews got there and EMS crews got there and they got a pulse back and he walked out of the hospital 8 days later. So that's one of the good ones I like to tell about it. It doesn't happen every day, but once in a while, that's how it goes. So anyways, any questions about anything I brought up? All right. I must have done a great job. Of it. Oh, no. Uh-oh, this might be a hard one.
But I saw this today, all of the trees at the southeast corner of 29th and Ridge are being removed, which makes me think, hopefully, that's the site of the new Northwest Fire Station that has been planned. Is there any progress on that land acquisition? Is it in the CIP for the next 10 years?
In the CIP, but probably not at that location.
Okay, because that fire you mentioned on Pepper Ridge is about a mile from that corner. I
Yeah.
know that's target area, but if it's not that lot, as long as there's some progress being made.
So right now we're working on Pawnee and Mays Station. We're in the design phase. We have that property brought, you know about that. But I think the next two are 8s and 15s. They're all stepping stone.
8s and 15s were remodels, right?
Right. And then as far as I know, not many ground purchased or that was.
We're working.
But you're in a general location as far as our staffing study.
That's a lot.
Yeah, yeah.
Looking so much good. Good thing for that lot.
There's 2 owners at that site. And it's one of them doesn't want to negotiate, so it'll be somewhere around that 29th and Ridge area.
Is there any other questions? No? Okay, thank you. Okay, next we're gonna hear from our public library report from our Wesley branch manager, Tracy Partridge.
Hi, everyone. I can actually see over this. It's like a miracle. This is all, I'm sure, because of Teresa. The first thing that I want to mention is we have actually finished our summer reading program for the summer. July 31st was actually the last day. Right now, we are in a grace period so that if people come in before school starts, we actually still give prizes as long as we have prizes. We have statistics through July 30th, and it does actually show an increase in participants and finishers, which is wonderful. I am very Westlink oriented, and so I always like the things that are like specific to Westlink. And we actually, if we combined our 2023 and 2024 finishers for the pre-readers and the kids read programs, we actually beat that this summer. So we beat 2 years of finishers. So I think that that's really exciting. Another thing that is exciting is, to me, we have a strong percentage of finishers of like the library's finishers here at Westlink. Our pre-readers, it looks like about 35% of the pre-readers for the system actually came from Westlink, roughly 45% and 47% of kids read and teens read. So we like to say the West Side likes to read, and then this actually shows it. So it's super exciting. We have some very exciting activities coming at the library very soon. This Saturday is going to be a big day. So Saturday, August 9th at our Advanced Learning Library, they are having our local Authors Day celebration. And that is a really big deal because in the morning, we're going to have a panel of local authors, and they're going to talk about their process so that people can learn from their experience and actually hopefully get some information that's going to help them with producing their own works. And the authors that are going to be on that panel are actually Prissa Barnes, Lori Dove, and J.M. Lee. Now, in the afternoon from 2 to 4 at the Advanced Learning Library again, there's going to be the opportunity to actually talk with and see the works of over 80 local authors. And those are going to be like all different types of authors, children's, nonfiction, fiction, so all different types will be represented. There will also be the opportunity to purchase their works and to get them signed. So that's super exciting. Also on August 9th, we are going to have a back to school literacy celebration. That's at our Angelou Northeast Library. That's from 10 to 1. That is made possible by the library, the Wichita Collective Impact, and United Way of the Plains. There's going to be live music, free books, and just a lot of really cool organizations there that people will have the opportunity to meet. The Pando Initiative, the Kansas Children's Service League, Prime Fit, and Urban League. Now, we are getting ready to have some changes in terms of hours at one of our libraries, the Maya Angelou Library. On Monday, August 18th, their hours are actually going to be reduced. And the reason that they're going to be reduced is because they were very fortunate and they got some of our Rockwell staff while the Rockwell Library was being remodeled. And now the Rockwell Library is actually soon going to be reopening. Okay, early fall is when it's going to be reopening. So they're going to reduce the Maya Angelou's hours, but it's also that they can open the Rockwell branch and get those staff back at their library. So we also benefited from, honestly, the Rockwell branch's remodel process because we actually received 6 of their staff members. And that was incredibly helpful when we were reopening after an extensive remodel. So we're very grateful. Our Alfred Branch Library is actually having their grand opening celebration on Saturday, August 23rd. In case you want to witness what has happened with their remodel, they have a lot more rooms, some really beautiful art, and just everything has been refreshed. So that'll be Saturday, August 23rd. There'll be ribbon cutting, crafts, a musical performance, and just a lot of fun activities. And then 2 more things that I want to mention. Okay, if you have a child who is actually a middle school or high schooler, when you are actually registering them for school, you have the opportunity to opt in for a student e-card. A student e-card really allows them to use their student ID number to access our public computers, Wi-Fi, and all of our electronic resources. It actually lasts until they are 18. So it goes through the summer, like through July of when they graduate is when it goes through. So I just wanted to mention that. And then last time I promised to wear one of my beautiful t-shirts that I got from the Friends of the Library. And this is actually, Wichita Public Library has been around since 1876. So we're about ready to have our 150th anniversary, which is quite exciting. And you too could have something equally beautiful by visiting our Friends of the Library bookstore at the Advanced Learning Library. And all of the proceeds from that goes to actually supporting the library. It's how we get our collections. It's how we get our technology. We're very fortunate in that we have a fabulous foundation and a fabulous Friends of the Library organization that helps make things at the library possible. Does anybody have any questions? Yes.
The connection between the schools and the library, is that only the schools?
It is. That's an excellent question. With that opt-in, yes, it's specifically for USD 259. Yes. Any other questions? Okay. It was wonderful to see you as always. Thank you very much. Thank you, Daisy.
Okay, next we're gonna hear Park and Recreation Department report from Division Manager Gary Ferris. He'll give us updates on our district and report on other activities across the city.
Thank you very much. Got a fairly long list here to go over. Our fall evolve guide, which has a ton of information about everything going on in recreation classes, that kind of thing. That is now available online. Registration for fall programs is officially open. Printed copies of the guide will be available starting August 13th at several of the City of Wichita facilities and other local businesses. And to view the guide online, just visit wichita.gov/guide. The Wichita Public Pools, they will be closing for the season Sunday, August 10th. Celebrate the summer with your puppy at Dog Days of Summer. This is going to take place Monday, August 11th at 5:30 p.m. at College Hill Pool. The event details are available at wichita.gov/aquatics. There's still time to register for Floating on the River Glow Tours. Those events are happening August 23rd and September 26th. Experience a glowing moonlight kayak ride to the Keeper of the Plains, complete with glow sticks, lights, and a riverfront view of the Ring of Fire. Light snacks and desserts will be had afterwards, and you can sign up at wichita.gov/river recreation. Adult recreation leagues for slow pitch softball, kickball, sand volleyball are open for fall registration. Those leagues offer a fun way to stay active and meet others in the community. More information can be found wichita.gov/athletics. Lots of information on our website. Some of the maintenance activities that have been going on and have been finished and are ongoing. Construction of new playground at the Proct Wetlands Park that is expected to begin this fall. Public art installation in Country Acres Dog Park scheduled for National Dog Day, which is August 26th, weather permitting. So we're really excited about that art coming in. Forestry crews have continued their storm cleanup efforts following the multiple storms from late May through June. And I want to give a special thanks to Public Works Street Maintenance. They have been a great partner in hauling a multiple tons of debris for forestry. So we really appreciate their help. Swanson Park and several other locations are currently being evaluated for post-storm and flood damage repairs. And some of those areas like West Meadows Playground is currently closed because of those of that damage that we received from the flood. So please be patient with us as we work through that. I'll stand for any questions. Seeing none. You all have a
Moving debris from Country Acre Dog Park. There's a big pile of
Yes,
debris.
that's on our list.
List, okay.
Yep. We've been notified that several times, but we try to triage things, and I'm just gonna say it's on the list. We know about it. We're gonna come get it.
Good.
So, all right. Thank you all.
We've got a recommended action to receive and file all staff reports. Okay, all in favor, say aye. Opposed, same sign. Okay. Moving on to new business. First, we're gonna is International Property Maintenance Code. Assistant City Manager Troy Anderson present on the IPMC.
Good evening. My name is Troy Anderson. I'm the Assistant City Manager for the City of Wichita. This is the fourth District Advisory Board that we've been at. So beginning to fine tune this, but this is my disclaimer here at the beginning that I'm going to tamper some expectations that this is going to take a little while to go through. Each of the other district took about an hour to get through. So there's a lot of information here to unpack. We'll try to go as quickly as possible, right? But the reason why this might take a little bit is because there's so much information here to unpack. This is the exact same slide deck that we presented to City Council just a couple of weeks, almost about a month and a half ago. For you to save all your questions to the end probably just doesn't work, right? So this is intended to be a little bit interactive. So if at any point during this presentation, if you have any questions, don't hesitate to chime in. We'll try to make this, again, as interactive as possible, but at the same time, I want to be respectful of everybody's time. So I'll try to go through this as quickly as possible. But again, please don't hesitate to chime in at any point if you have any questions. Okay, so this really started a couple of years ago. We stood in front of City Council talking about property owner rights, subsequently property owner responsibilities. I'll kind of reiterate that here in just a second. But this is a little bit about the agenda and the outline tonight, how that led into some municipal code review, how we also stood that up against the International Property Maintenance Code, what we found out. And then really we'll kind of end with where we think this is going to go next steps with some policies, procedures, and ultimately some performance measures. So first and foremost, right, we start off this conversation just like I did a couple of years ago, and just like we had this same presentation to City Council a couple of weeks ago. We understand property owner rights. We get it from federal law to state law to local codes and ordinances. we understand the property owners have rights, okay? The other half of what we talk about, though, is property owner responsibilities. I'll get to that in just a section. But generally speaking, we understand property owners have the right to acquire, use, dispose of property freely, so long as those actions do not violate the rights of others. That's where we're going to get into kind of that responsibility side of it. We know that there are Fifth and 14th Amendments to the US Constitution. We get Kansas property and real estate laws. But again, property owners also have a responsibility. Property owners are legally obligated to provide reasonable care and maintenance of their property to ensure that it's safe from dangerous conditions. That includes commercial property, residential property, that even includes property owned by the Wichita Housing Authority, right? So this does not preclude even the city and the housing authority from complying with property maintenance codes. This is applicable to owner occupied residences, to owner landlords, to operators, and again, even on to non-residential. So this is an excerpt right out of the International Property Maintenance Code. And really the emphasis around this is to show that this is the responsibility of everybody involved, right? It doesn't just land on the tenant. It doesn't just land on the property owner, although primarily 95% of the time, this is a property owner related issue, but even tenants are responsible to maintain properties, right? So more specifically, the owner of the premise shall maintain the structure and exterior property in compliance with these requirements, so on and so forth. And occupants of a dwelling unit, rooming unit, or housekeeping unit are responsible for keeping in a clean, sanitary, and safe condition that part of the dwelling unit, rooming unit, housekeeping unit, or premises they occupy and control. It's not new. That came out of the International Property Maintenance Code, which again, we have not yet adopted yet. But that same kind of language currently appears in our codes and ordinances. It's a little hard to extract out of that though, right? So out of Wichita Municipal Code, section 2004-050, you see there at the bottom, general requirements relating to the safe and sanitary maintenance of parts of dwellings and dwelling units. No owner or operator shall occupy as owner occupant or permit any other to occupy any dwelling unit for the purpose where it does not comply. Has a whole slew of compliance measures. Goes on to read in subsection 070 that even subsection 2, every occupant of a dwelling or dwelling unit shall keep in a clean and sanitary condition that part of the dwelling. So not new. So a couple of years ago, when we first started this conversation with City Council, what spun out of that conversation were a couple of efforts, right? One of the things that City Council at the time wanted us to do was to go out and do an educational campaign on rights and responsibilities, not only of property owners, but of tenants, right? So we put together this handbook called the Landlord Tenant Handbook. It's published on the city's website, as well as we actually had some physical copies that we prepared and we distributed to some folks. And it really kind of just goes into those landlord-tenant relationships, right? But we just wanted to make sure that we continued to emphasize the point that 2 years ago, we didn't just kind of go dark, right? There were things that we were working on in the background. We started with the educational campaign. We also went on and did some other ordinances. I'll hit those in just a second, right? But as part of that educational campaign, right, we had to educate landlords and tenants. The occupants and tenants have the right to live in a habitable rental property, right? This generally means it must be free of any serious health, safety threats, vermin infestation, and functioning plumbing and electricity. This goes beyond any codes or ordinances that a city adopts, right? The courts have found called a warranty of habitability. So even if cities don't adopt codes and ordinances regarding property maintenance, those landlord-tenant relationships, tenants still have certain rights, even if they're not even addressed in their lease agreements, right? Courts have recognized an implied warranty of habitability in residential leases. Again, even if the rental agreement doesn't outline the landlord's responsibility, it's implied. Here's a couple of other specificities, right, around that warranty of habitability. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on that. The other thing that we immediately heard from, right, landlord says, well, but my tenants aren't taking care of their dwelling unit, right? So that's where we said, well, Whether it's language coming out of the International Property Maintenance Code or whether it's language out of the current Weatherford Wichita Municipal Code, occupants of a dwelling or dwelling have to keep in a clean and sanitary condition, and they must otherwise abide by all other terms and conditions of the lease agreement. Okay, so we went out on this educational campaign, right? In the meantime, we also enacted a retaliatory eviction ordinance. That was one of the other projects we were working on in the background. So that was approved by City Council in January 2024. It aimed at preventing landlords from retaliating against tenants who express concerns about their housing conditions, commencement of eviction, increasing rent, reduction of services provided by the landlord. But really where we spent most of our time over the last couple of years is doing a deep dive into our city's codes and ordinances regarding property maintenance, and really kind of standing that up against the International Property Maintenance Code. So what we found was throughout the municipal code, the code was duplicative across titles, kind of resulted in some confusion. In one section, it might appear to follow the same logic, but it referenced individuals or policies or procedures that didn't really exist as it did in other sections. So it's really disjointed. So one of the first things we talked about was we need to consolidate that property maintenance code. We need to consolidate all those codes and ordinances into one easy to use, easy to reference, consolidated code section. So we looked at Title 7, Title 8, Title 18, Title 20. And then again, we stood that up against the International Property Maintenance Code. So let me talk a little bit about the International Property Maintenance Code. So the International Property Maintenance Code is part of the code series and the code family published by the International Code Council. The International Code Council also publishes the International Building Code, the International Residential Code, the International Fire Code. A lot of these code standards the city and Sedgwick County have already adopted, right? So this dovetails very nicely in with a lot of the code standards regarding building and building construction and building that we already have on our books today. Additionally, the Property Maintenance Code, the International Property Maintenance Code, is a vetted, professionally developed body of work based on best practice, case law, technical standards. Cities that adopt the International Property Maintenance Code across the nation know that it's somewhat of a tried and true and tested code standard and code series that can be upheld in court, right? When cities adopt their own sort of municipal codes, if those codes are challenged, right, it just creates another level of defense that a city has to stand on in order to justify compliance measures and those kind of things. So it's that industry standard best practice model that we want to look at. Again, it's part of the ICC family of codes, and it's designed to actually work with the building, fire, plumbing, mechanical codes, and everything else that we've already adopted. So sort of seem to make sense, right? Especially when we also look at our property maintenance codes may be decades in the making, right? Property maintenance code, much like every code series, they come out with a code series every 3 years. So every 3 years, we evaluate the new version of the International Building Code, or the International Residential Code, or the International Fire Code. Now, the Property Maintenance Code doesn't evolve generally as quickly or as holistically as some of these other code standards, but every couple of years, we're constantly evaluating that latest and greatest code series to make sure that we're keeping up with building code standards and those kind of things. So it's an opportunity for us to revisit this every couple of years and make sure that we're sort of on that cutting edge of industry standard best practice. Additionally, we can adopt the International Property Maintenance Code in full, or we can make local amendments to it, just like we do all of the other code documents, all the other international code series documents. So again, this is not just something that we are looking at. Even in the state of Kansas, other jurisdictions have already adopted the IPMC. Topeka, Manhattan, Overland Park, Lawrence, Kansas City. It's not new to Kansas, it's not new across the nation. It's a pretty standard practice. So how do we go about implementing this? And at this point in time, I'm gonna take 2 seconds and just catch my breath. Any questions so far? I'm going through really, really fast and I didn't see anybody kind of raise a hand, so.
My question on the last slide, do all the codes come out around the same time? Are you evaluating them with each other or do they come out piecemeal?
Generally speaking, they come out, yes, all at about the same time. So 2018 was a code series, 2021 was a code series. The only one that doesn't follow, that's the NEC National Electric Code, and that's the same 3-year cycle, but that comes in an off year. So generally speaking, yes, they all come out about the same year. So. Okay, so here's how we're going to kind of take the next steps. We've been working with our law department, right? We've been drafting ordinances that will repeal and sort of replace various sections that are only specific to property maintenance codes in Title 7, in Title 8, in Title 18, and in Title 20. And we're gonna embed, sort of adopt and embed the IPMC into Title 20. Now, there are, a little bit of a caveat, there are other subsections to Title 7 and Title 8 that we will not repeal, right? Just because they are code and ordinances that are not necessarily applicable to property maintenance, but we want to leave them on the books. So again, very specific, very surgical, so to speak, right? Of only repealing and replacing those sections that are either redundant or otherwise covered under the property maintenance code. Okay, I'm going to dive in a little bit here into how the International Property Maintenance Code is organized and structured. And then we're going to kind of take a look of how we propose making some amendments to the actual property maintenance code as part of the adoption. So this is how the International Property Maintenance Code is organized, right? Chapter 1 is the scope and administration that talks about at a really high level how the code's adopted, who the authority of jurisdiction and the code official is, how you sort of inspect and notify property owners of violation and issue violations and those kind of things, right? That just the overarching practice of how you deal with the day-to-day operations of property maintenance code enforcement. Whole section, chapter 2 of definitions, primarily, we'll hit on this in just a second. We're going to adopt the definitions as they are. We're going to bring over a couple of definitions that we currently have on the books, a couple amendments to some definitions, but for all intents and purposes, we're going to try to remain as true to the actual property maintenance code definitions as possible. Chapter 3, the general requirements. This is where we go from sort of property conditions, right, to exterior structure, to now interior structure, to now interior finishes. So it works from sort of the outside in and covers sort of all things, just general property conditions. Chapter 4 gets into more specifically about the building, right? What are the light, ventilation, occupancy limitations? Then we get very technical into sort of what we call the MEP, the mechanical, electrical, plumbing specifications. And then last but not least, get into fire codes, fire safety requirements. And then there's a slew of reference standards to testing agencies and those kind of things and how we continue to measure the compliance. So when we look at the amendments, there's some really broad amendments we're gonna make throughout the document, right? And number one, those are amendments that assure that we're in compliance with state statute or other locally adopted codes and ordinances, right? Obviously, we don't want to be in violation of state law. So in working with our law department, right, making sure that every code section is consistent with state law. And if not, then making the necessary amendments. The other thing that we're going to do throughout the document, even when you saw, I was talking about mechanical, electrical, plumbing sort of specifications, right? There are sections that refer to the International Mechanical Code or the International Plumbing Code. Well, we've already adopted all of those codes and all of those code standards, and we've compiled them into one sort of document, right? And that's referred to as the Wichita Sedgwick County Unified Building and Trade Code. So throughout the document, we'll sort of amend this code section to read, rather than International Mechanical Code, it will now read the Wichita Sedgwick County Unified Building and Trade Code. So you'll just see some overarching amendments throughout the entire document. That way I don't have to refer to those every time we see them. Okay, let's jump into chapter 1. So under scope and administration, right? It almost reads as if you're filling in the blanks, right? So section 101.1 says title, name of jurisdiction, it says fill in the blank, right? So we're going to amend section 101.1 to read that the name of the jurisdiction shall read the city of Wichita. Now, notice it doesn't say county of Sedgwick or any other. We are just concerned with the city of Wichita at this point in time. If other cities within Sedgwick County want to adopt the same code standard, they can do so. That's at their discretion. We're not going to impose this upon any other city in the county. Additionally, we're not going to impose this on the county. There are folks who reside in the county who may not necessarily agree with the same level of property maintenance as properties in the city. So this is specifically intended for city of Wichita. We'll skip down a couple of kind of chapters and verses down to a section 103.1, creation of an agency. Well, we already have an agency. That agency is the Metropolitan Area Building Construction Department. So we'll amend that code section to read as such, and subsequently make sure that consistent throughout the document that the official in charge is the code official, and the code official is the director of the Metropolitan Area Building Construction Department, kind of defined that way. Then it goes on to section 105, duties and powers of the code official. Again, we just want to make a specific mention that those duties cannot be in conflict with state law and the state Kansas Tort Claims Act. We'll make some necessary amendments to section 105. Section 106, means of appeal. Every code series has this language that there's an appeal body. So under all of those code standards, it's always referred to the Board of Appeals. Locally, we've amended all of those to be the Board of Code Standards and Appeals. We're just going to amend it the same as we do all of the other code standards, so that it all refers to the same board to hear those appeals. Okay. This is where it gets interesting, right? And there's only a couple of these, so bear with me. Section 107.3 talks about prosecution of violation, right? So the property maintenance code says, generally speaking, this is how you should deal with prosecuting a violation, right? So this became a policy question that we posed to city council, and that policy question was based on how do we want to address this in the future. So this slide helps better frame where we are today, okay? So right now, best way to answer this, we've tried to articulate this. We are achieving the desired results as it was originally contemplated, right? A couple of decades ago, when our property maintenance codes were first being introduced, right, there was an appetite and desire to work with property owners, work with property owners, work with property owners, work with property owners, right? So over the years, again, that's been the practice, and there are some that believe that we are not achieving different outcomes, but that's somewhat originally how it was intended when the codes and ordinances were adopted, right? So there's been a little bit of shift in momentum and thought around. Best way I can kind of describe this, right, is it's been all carrot and no stick, right? So this now comes back to introduce this element of, hey, we understand and respect property owner rights, to the extent that those are not infringing on the rights of other property owners within the community, right? So as you'll see here in a minute, there's been an appetite or desire to shift to somewhat of a more assertive approach when it comes to property maintenance codes. More specifically on the books today, we can grant extensions after extension, after extension, after extension. And pretty soon, it somewhat waters down our ability to achieve the desired outcomes. Additionally, even when things go past code enforcement officers and go into courts, environmental court has similar compliance driven model. Work with the property owner, work with the property owner, work with the property owner, to the point where there's just some properties we're just not getting any kind of movement on. So the way the property maintenance code addresses it is one thing, right? But we wanted to pose the policy question to city council, and then we can go amend that subsection 107.3, however the local jurisdiction desires. So we presented the following three options. Option one is we could replace environmental court with simply an administrative hearing. This would actually become less assertive than we are today, right? In other words, the administrative penalties are, there's no jail time, there's no probation, there's no conviction, there's no penalties, there's no fines, right? It's simply an administrative hearing process. It almost, again, becomes less assertive than even what we're doing today. But that's an option. And we presented that option to city council. Option two is sort of the other end of the spectrum, right? We're developing kind of a bookend to options here. So the other end of the spectrum is option two. We modify environmental court. We become more assertive. We repeal the court's compliance goal as codified by the charter ordinance, and it becomes more punitive, right? So those are kind of the bookends of either direction that this could go. I can tell you that the International Property Maintenance Code leans towards more of option two, and simply once a violation is identified, if it's not abated by the property owner, it's sent to court and the courts deal with it, right? So we presented a third option, right? It's a little bit more of a hybrid model. It's a little bit more assertive than what we're doing today, not quite as assertive as option two, but definitely moving in that direction. Definitely moving away from option one. And it's where the prosecutor decides whether or not to send a UCR to an administrative hearing or to environmental court. For example, might be a first-time offender, didn't really know and understand, maybe didn't necessarily have the resources. So we can let the prosecutor's office kind of handle that decision. Okay, let's send you to an administrative hearing. And for those perhaps repeat offenders, known violators, repeat offenders, yep, we're just going to immediately proceed to courts, kind of the, not go to jail and do not pass go, but kind of that idea, right? So, okay. The feedback we got from city council at the time, without sort of a formal vote, right? We got some consensus that option three was probably the most desirable approach given this community. So that's the direction we've started to head. I would certainly entertain any feedback at this point in time. Again, interactive, if anybody has any thoughts or comments. Yeah.
How do property management companies work in?
Sure. So property management companies work for the property owner. So we work, again, 97% of the property maintenance code is specifically directed towards the property owner, right? And so if we work with a property management group who then is representing the interest of the property owner, we're okay with that. We don't mind working with property management groups, but our notice of violations are going to go directly to the property owner. Yeah.
I think that's a good way to take us to it. Out. I think the property management company has to almost be as held responsible for said issue as the owner of the property. The owner of the property can bring it to fire and not get his mail or anything like that.
Yeah, yeah.
My other business, all we do is make rates. People move out, we go in and we bring them up to code.
Yep.
That's why I'm asking about property management, how that ties into this. I think you guys put that more into their role work as well when they're renting properties and when people are moving out.
Yep.
You're gonna see a lot better reactions.
I couldn't agree with you more, right? In the context of continuing to work to achieve compliance without having to go through sort of the courts, right? Absolutely. If we have that property manager information on file, we'll be more than happy to communicate that to property management group. Oftentimes we see property owners will have mail sort of forwarded to the property management group. At the end of the day, unfortunately, we can only issue a notice of violation or a UCC to the property owner. The property management group is the subcontractor of the owner. They actually don't have any sort of interest in the property. So we start with the property owner.
When I get to, I'm also a licensed general contractor.
Yep.
So I work directly with the MAPC a lot on projects that we use. I'm held responsible whether I own a property now. Now, when you look at the rental side of things, basically the property management companies, they are not held to any standard. They just pass the buck to either the contractor or to the owner. So I think that there needs to be something in here. You know, if you want to manage 400 properties, that property management company needs to be able to, you know, have every one of their properties comply with this code.
So,
They don't manage the property.
not to be a spoiler alert, right? But there is an ordinance. It's separate and distinct from the property maintenance code, because again, property maintenance code under state and local law, we can only sort of work directly, technically with the property owner. There is an ordinance that is being drafted. We'll get to the last slide in the slide deck of, there have been some ancillary conversations that have been going around other things. I'll get to my last slide, so hold out for the last slide. That requires a local property maintenance property maintenance group to be registered with the city. There is an ordinance that's being drafted that will get presented to city council, and then it's ultimately up to the governing body to decide whether to approve or enact that ordinance. But generally speaking, the way the state law and the property maintenance code, it's specifically working with the property owner. But there have been conversations around working with the property management groups. And so there is a separate ordinance that is being written right now that will ultimately get put in front of the governing body for their consideration. So thank you for that. I appreciate that. Okay. All right, the next one. Section 111, this one was pretty straightforward too. Under section 111 of the property maintenance code, it actually gives the authority to the code official to identify a building as unsafe, called an unsafe structure, unfit for human occupancy, placard the building, and can order the building demolished, right? In Wichita, that demolition has gone under somewhat of it also goes before city council, right? So knowing that that's been the practice of this community, we also put that question in front of city council as sort of a policy decision, just knowing and understanding this is the way the property maintenance code is written. This has been our practice, what direction you want to go. The feedback we got from the city council at the time was they wanted to remain as kind of that body that would hear those demolition cases before they ultimately went to contract. So and we presented kind of both sides of the argument to city council. Again, we got some initial feedback, so we feel comfortable with kind of a guidance and direction from the governing body. Okay. Chapter 2. Actually, no, the rest of this will go pretty fast. Maybe one or two more that came up in discussion that I'll get on, but otherwise, chapter 2, again, we'll adopt the IPMC definitions. We will bring over a handful of other definitions of a couple amendments, but primarily we're going to stick to the property maintenance code definitions. Chapter 3, few minor amendments through subsection 303 swimming pools. We'll amend it to make sure that it also complies with Wichita Municipal Code section 7.72. Section 304.3 premises identification. We're going to amend that to make sure it's consistent with Wichita Municipal Code section 1004.190. It actually gets pretty narrowly focused, right? That basically the address numbers on residents, the address numbers can be no smaller than the property maintenance code says 4 inches. Our city code and ordinances said 3 inches. So rather than having it 4 inches and make everybody go out and buy new addresses, we amended it to the less restrictive of 2. That's consistent with what's on our books today. So that's why we have to amend it. 304.14 insect screens being required from April 1 to 11/30. Again, property maintenance code says basically fill in the blanks. Again, whether or not you have insect screens in Florida is going to look wildly different than in Minnesota during the times of the year. So we have to fill in the blanks. 307 handrails and guardrails. We're going to make a few minor amendments just to be consistent with other codes and ordinances. Chapter 4, this one's a little bit nuanced, but an amendment that complies with other code sections we already have on the books in lieu of a window in bathrooms and water closet rooms, an openable skylight approved by the code official may be added. And just kind of, we went through this fine tooth comb, chapter and verse, right? And made sure that the amendments we need to make are consistent with other codes and ordinances. Chapter 5, plumbing facilities, 506.3 grease interceptors and food service establishments shall comply with other municipal code sections. Storm drainage, comply with other municipal code sections. Okay, I'm gonna dig into this one a little bit because this has come up in a couple of conversations, so I want to expand the conversation a little bit. 602, heating facilities, buildings maintained heating facility requirement, deleting the exception that in areas where the average monthly temperature is above 30 degrees Fahrenheit, a minimum temperature of 65 degrees Fahrenheit shall be maintained. More specifically, and again, that just kind of points to our climate here. Again, heating requirements in Florida are going to look wildly different than they do up in Minnesota. We're just filling in some blanks. 602.3, the heat supply, though, is one that we continue to, that heat must be supplied, maintained, requirement to furnish heat. And we're removing the date ranges for minimum temperature and removed exceptions, and specifically the requirement to furnish heat. Now, what you don't see on this slide deck is maintaining cooling, right? So the property maintenance code is silent on requiring buildings maintain or introduce cooling equipment. Okay, so you have to think clear back to really old buildings, right? Really old residences, even as far back as fireplaces. A fireplace or a can serve as a heating supply, right? But long before cooling equipment was ever invented, I can't go back to those late 1800, early 1900 homes and force a property owner to put in cooling equipment, right? So that's why the distinction is we can require heat supply, but that's why generally the property maintenance code doesn't address cooling. Now, there are some communities that have amended the property maintenance code to introduce cooling requirements, right? But generally speaking, where we differentiate is there's a caveat, right, that says any mechanical equipment that was installed at the time that the building was approved for construction and occupied, that equipment must be maintained in good working order. So if a home that was built in 1900 that didn't have cooling equipment, right, but had a heat supply of a fireplace, you have to maintain those in good working order. I can't force you to go add state-of-the-art equipment, right? But a home that was built in 2010 and it was originally permitted with both heating and cooling equipment, even though this says you don't have to put in cooling equipment, it does say that any mechanical equipment that was installed must be maintained in good working order. That's how we get around the issue though. If it was built with cooling equipment, you got to maintain the cooling equipment. If it was built with heating equipment, you got to maintain the heating equipment. Yes.
If you, on a house you had it upon, you ready to sell it, you're gonna have to update some of this stuff before you can sell a house, like your electrical box or.
Nope.
There's no code on that you have to update that?
Nope, not. There are some communities that have adopted codes and ordinances that require inspections prior to conveyance of land. No, that's not what this says. What this says is you must maintain your property. If a complaint is lodged and an inspection is had and a violation is identified, then yes, you have to make those improvements. But in accordance with what they call the International Existing Building Code, you only have to maintain the building based on when it was kind of permitted and constructed. So one of the easiest examples we point to early 1900s, old knob and tube electrical, right? under the existing building code and under the property maintenance code, if you have old knob and tube electrical wiring, as long as that electrical wiring is in good operating order, no, you don't have to upgrade and you don't have to make improvements to your resident. Now, if your equipment becomes frayed and inoperable and a fire hazard, right, and now it becomes a life safety issue, then yes, you might have to make those necessary improvements to bring it up to code, but only in the case of a violation and inspection and subsequently compliance measures. But otherwise, as long as you're maintaining your building in good working operating order, no, you wouldn't have to do that. Okay. Really fast. Chapter 7, fire safety requirements. Really, there were no amendments other than those ones we previously talked about. Okay, some next steps. We're actually flying through this. We've gone out to a couple of dabs already. We've got a couple more. Our plan is to return to city council. It's really going to probably be more September at this point in time. We just couldn't be in two places at one time, and a lot of these dab meetings are held on the same night. So it took us a little longer to get through the dabs as we intended. So we're probably going to get back to city council probably September with these ordinances. Our intent is to try and go live January 1, 2026. But again, there's a little caveat asterisk there that says, so long as we can kind of do all of the things that we need to do on the back end with our management system and everything else. Plan right now is still to try to go live January 1, 2026. Okay, so there's really kind of a couple of parts to this, right? Something that we have been telling all the district advisory boards. We also told city council this. We said, look, adopting the International Property Maintenance Code isn't going to make property maintenance violations go away, right? The code's the code's the code. It's just a code. Unless you're enforcing it and how you enforce it, that's going to dictate your outcome, right? But if you imagine, similar to a house, we are sort of rebuilding the house on a new foundation, right? It's a way of looking at property maintenance code and property maintenance code compliance and enforcement from a different perspective, from a different lens. So it has to start with the adoption of the code and a clean code series. The next thing that we're going to work on, which we're actually in the process of doing right now so that we can be ready to go live by January 1, 2026, is adopting a whole new standard operating procedure based on the code that we're adopting, right? So we're going to work feverishly over the next couple of months, hopefully through end of December, being ready for January 1, drafting it, finalizing it, and training our code enforcement folks on implementation of those new policies and procedures. Additionally, we're going to try and stand up a couple of different performance measures. And really these performance measures are going to be siloed, right? In a couple of different areas. Number one is around the complaints, right? We've heard a lot of speculation that the reason why maybe issues are not being resolved is because issues are being lost in the complaint process, right? The complaint process, I didn't say this at the beginning, but I'll say it now. Our entire system is complaint driven, okay? Our code enforcement officers aren't driving around looking for violations. They're not. It is complaint driven. If you see a property and you think it has high weeds and grass, or it's got a hole in the roof, if you're not complaining, nobody's doing anything about it, right? It's entirely complaint driven.
Not a broken.
There are some case law around why cities do it like that, right? There's some case law that, you know, you have to be able to sort of stand before your accuser kind of case law.
Some see it, say it, you know.
Right. Yep.
Like that's what MABCD is driving around in trucks for. So if they're seeing the same thing that I'm seeing, like what's stopping them from making the same complaint?
There's not, to the extent that, on the other hand, we've also seen in some code enforcement abusing that, right? Where they will target a particular property owner, or they'll target a particular property management group right? And so they're not equitably sort of enforcing the codes and ordinances. So a lot of cities revert back to, in order to kind of remove subjectivity, remove liability from being involved in a lawsuit of just sort of narrowly enforcing the codes and ordinances, they revert back to a complaint-driven process. It's a little bit of a balance of reducing liability on the city and trying to be more equitable in the enforcement of codes and
I'm
ordinances.
just challenging you a little bit.
Oh, yeah.
I really like what you're saying with all this stuff.
Yep.
It seems like we're just kind of putting it all into a book, we're putting it online, we're hoping that people want to read it. But
Yep.
nobody's actually going to do anything to enforce this. So.
Yeah, if somebody's glass is 2 feet high and
Yeah.
nobody complains about it, then I guess it's
That's legal.
There are some cities have tried to bridge the gap a little bit. There's been some of this exercise and practice locally. We're gonna try to start with kind of the foundation of just, some communities have adopted what they call a 360 practice, right? Where if I go out to a property, I'm not just arbitrarily driving around looking for violations, right? They call it this 360. If I show up complaint driven at a property for a specific violation, was there a violation? Yep, there was a violation. I do a 360-degree approach. Is there any other property that I can see within 360 degrees that also has the same violation, right? Now, yeah, there's one right across the street. I can go and address that one. It's a little bit of kind of the hybrid model between the two. Initially, we're going to focus on just trying to implement kind of the standard practices around this. But if in the future, fast forward 3 to 5 years, if we're seeing some progress, we might be able to introduce something like that, right? But that's how some cities have tried to bridge the gap between the two. Again, not saying it right, not saying it's wrong. In fact, I've seen some communities use it very successfully. Primarily, we're going to try to start at least the foundational level and make sure that we're doing this really, really well first, and then we can expand into some other concepts. So, yes,
What enforcement officials do you have
that's a great question.
for the entire city
Yes,
or the city and the county both?
the county has 1, city has
So-
15.
15
They're
and
specific to nuisance.
how many residents do we have?
We have 400,000 residences. We have about 100,000 housing units. Yeah.
Just
So.
for perspective.
Absolutely, no. And that's why this becomes so critical, right? And imagine, if you will, if we have a code enforcement officer who's going back to the same property time and time and time and time again, that code enforcement officer is also not what? Going to other properties, right? So we're trying to be as understanding as possible, trying to give property owners as much opportunity to evade a violation voluntarily. But at some point in time, we've got to issue that notice of violation, got to send them to the courts, and we've got to move on to the next property, because you're right, there are a lot of properties out there that we need to get to, and our code enforcement officers are overwhelmed. We want to try to streamline the process and still at the same time respecting property owner rights. So we're going to try and find a better balance. Thank you for that.
So if you adopt this,
Yeah.
is this gonna increase the number of cases exponentially? And if so, can the courts handle that? I mean, seems like a.
So-
It's out there.
Here's the way I've been answering that question. Great question. The volume is what 15 code enforcement officers can handle, right? The distinction isn't necessarily the volume, right? But it's the spread, right? That rather than taking 15 officers to address a handful of properties over and over and over and over and over again, right? Those same 15 officers might be able to get to more properties because they're being streamlined in such a way that we're gaining that compliance in a shorter period of time. If not, then we're also leaning on prosecutor's office and the courts to help with that so that they can get to more properties. At the end of the day, the caseload is what the caseload of 15 officers is. The intent of this is a little bit to get them out and away from any one particular property for very long so that they can get on and to more properties. Okay. Next one is, once it does create a case, how long are the code enforcement officers carrying that case? And then ultimately, once it's handed off to the prosecutor's office, how long are the prosecutor's office and the courts actually taking? So we're gonna create a couple of silos of performance measures to really make sure that we're doing what we said we were gonna do. Okay, this is the slide I had talked about a little while ago. These are some sidebar conversations that have been taking place over the last couple of years. Again, I'm not standing here advocating for or against any one of these. What we've done is we've said, look, we hear you, community. There may be some folks out there who want these things. There may be some folks out here who don't want these things, but these are not property maintenance code related, right? These are ancillary to, and so things like income discrimination. It's not a property related issue. It's a landlord-tenant relationship issue. Rental registry, again, not a property maintenance issue. More of a property owner, landlord, rental registry, things like landlord watch lists, things like certified preferred landlord lists, things like requiring a local property manager, things like extra penalties for repeat offenders. Again, not generally property maintenance codes, but there have been some sidebar conversations around, well, how do we address these other things that are housing quality related, right? But not specifically geared toward a building or a property, just those ancillary type of relationship as it relates to things like landlord, tenant, so on and so forth. So there are some other policy considerations being discussed, and ultimately these are decisions that the governing body has to ultimately decide on. So whether or not staff presents an ordinance or not, we're not advocating for, nor are we advocating against. We are simply presenting ordinances that ultimately the governing body is going to have to weigh in on policies. Those are some other conversations taking place. With that being said, I'll stand for questions. Yeah.
Troy, first of all, thank you for the presentation, the attention to detail, super thorough. Curious in the process, I know you told us where the next steps are.
Yeah.
Have you had any engagement or questions from the likes of local stakeholders or subject matter experts, whether it's the apartment association, the realtors association, builders association? Have they weighed in on any of these policies?
I met with a gentleman the other day, man, I'm gonna forget his name, and I apologize if he's watching this or tuning in, representing a landlord association. And so we've got some folks who are representative of the landlord association. Obviously, we're really, really close to, a lot of property owners, elected officials. Yes, there are stakeholders who are involved, who are weighing in on this. So far, we've gotten some really, really good feedback on the idea that we're headed in the right direction. We were actually at one of the district advisory boards, and one of the groups came up and said, hey, have you thought about sort of those alternative grasses in your high weeds and grass section, right? Because the high weeds and grasses, you can't have high weeds and grass more than, I think it's like 12 inches or something like that, right? And so there's this group out there that wants us to think about holistically these alternative landscaping, the alternative. Hey, you're right, that's good feedback. We have some ordinances on the books right now, right? And so the International Property Maintenance Code doesn't contemplate that stuff. So that's something that, as we have engaged folks during the district advisory boards, we've gotten some really good feedback from associations like that who have said, hey, have you also thought about this? We're going to try to make sure that we incorporate that in the ordinances as we put that in the city council. So yeah, if there's associations, they're like, hey, you ought to take a look at this, or hey, you ought to go talk to Troy, so they're talking about this. We'll be more than happy to meet with anybody, everybody, as much as we can, as long as we're being expeditious. Absolutely. Yep.
Anyone from the board have any questions?
Troy, I got a question.
Yes, sir.
We have a house in District 5 that is tall weeds and grass.
Yep.
Turn it in, goes through DCD and everything. They go out and mow it a couple times a year and charge the property owner.
Yep.
The trees are grown over so much, it's even covering a 2-car garage.
Yeah.
You can't even see the house from 2 sides.
Yep.
Is there a way to address, the neighbors are obviously frustrated.
I'd have to go back and look at the exterior property language in there. I'd have to go back and look. I don't know if it would necessarily address specifically that situation, although there's this balance, right, between the property maintenance code is actually written sort of very broadly. For example, I don't know if I even have, oh, I do have it in here, great. Section 305.3 talks about interior surfaces, right? This is what I talk about when I say sort of broadly interpreted. What you don't see in section 305.3 are what? Words. Mold, black mold, right? So the reason why you don't see those in here is because if you get so specific to say that it must be black mold before you can address the violation, we have to take a sample, we have to send it off to testing, and if it comes back, regardless of color, that it's not black mold, then we go, what, there's nothing we can do about it. But instead, if it's broadly written, right? Interior surfaces, including windows and doors, shall be maintained in good, clean, and sanitary condition, period. Peeling, chipping, flaking, or abraded paint shall be repaired, removed, or covered. Cracked or loose plaster, decayed wood, and other defective surface conditions shall be corrected. That first sentence there, the courts have found, and other jurisdictions have leaned in on, mildew, mold, black mold, I don't care what it is not sanitary. Right? So it's really easy for a code enforcement officer to go, that's not sanitary, right? You need to go abate that violation. Again, I don't care if it's black mold or mildew. Now we'll come back with probably some amendments that says, well, what does it mean to be sanitary? Sanitary means things to include, but not be limited to mold, mildew, et cetera. We can help kind of curtail some of that interpretation, right? But it's designed to be broadly interpreted sort of generally, so it can be applied to numerous. We have no idea what may be construed as unsanitary. Who knows? I can tell you, I was actually in one of my previous roles responsible for addressing a house that was literally on an episode of Hoarders Buried Alive. I mean, it was, and so how do you even begin to kind of walk through every aspect of kind of really easy? That's not sanitary, right? So, and we addressed a whole slew of other issues with the house, not just the sanitary condition, but that, so to your point about the landscaping, right? I'd have to go dig into that code section to see if there was, your exterior property has to be maintained in a good workmanlike manner, right? And that may be construed depending on if there are visibility issues, if there is safety issues, right? I mean, there's things that we can look at, and we can dig into from the code of ordinances and see if there's, again, we want to try to find that balance between recognizing a property owner's rights, but at the same time, making sure that that's not infringing on the rights of the neighboring property. There's another one around infestation, but I reverse.
All right, one last thing.
Yeah.
At this point, if you guys are going out there to address the tall weeds and the trees overgrown, the garage days, then again, we as the building department failed. We did not address other issues that are at properties right here.
Yep.
So at what point does this become address the issue to surveying and seeing press?
Great question. So while the inspectors are on site, on property, just because they have been brought out to that property to look at one violation, they do have the discretion to look at the rest of that property. So if I get called out to high weeds and grass and there's a hole in the roof, right, I'm not going to ignore the hole in the roof. I'm going to address the high weeds and grass, and I'm going to address the hole in the roof, but it has to be limited to that property. So.
Yes. I appreciate you cited other Kansas municipalities that have adopted their own versions of the IPMC. And I'm curious if you're aware, is this a relatively recent trend? Are we sort of late to the game on this, or how? What was the impetus for?
So, man, International Property Maintenance Code has been around 30 years, 30 years. International Code Council, 1957, something like that. That's cool. I mean, these codes and standards have been around for decades. There's other code standards as well. There's like a a standard property maintenance code or something like that, that's put out by another agency that's not the internet. The International Code Council and the International is sort of the standard across the, another one, for example, some cities adopt the Uniform Plumbing Code versus the International Plumbing Code. Some of the distinctions are the Uniform Plumbing Code is more liberally construed around the number of fixtures and those kind of things. I'll let you read between the lines on that one. So some cities adopt the Uniform Plumbing Code rather than the International Plumbing Code. Some cities just adopt their own codes and ordinances, but having sort of an industry standard best practice really lays a good solid foundation for how we address some of these issues, especially with repeat offenders, known violators, housing quality. Why we start here? Yep, good questions, thank you.
Okay, so do I have any other questions from? Hearing none. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Up next, we're gonna hear from Philip Zevenbergen. Did I say your name right? Steven, okay, thank you. Thank you, yeah.
You have. So.
Well, good evening. My name is Philip Zevenbergen with the Metropolitan Area Planning Department. First zoning case this evening is PUD 2025-11. It's a planned unit development. It is a zone change request. And PUD, just as a reminder, is a custom zoning classification typically used in unique situations in order to provide custom development standards for specific situations when a standard zoning classification doesn't necessarily work with what the applicant is looking to do. The applicant in this case is Evergy. They are looking to expand an existing substation approximately at Second and Tyler. It's basically just southeast of Wilbur Middle School, not far from here. I'm just going to go to the pictures, because everybody likes picture books. So the existing substation you can see there, and they have worked with the property owner to the east to be able to do a small expansion of the substation with the access still staying off of 2nd Street. And the reason they're doing a PUD is to modify some regular standards. The property is zoned single family SF5. This substation has been around for quite some time, where it's a non-conforming use in single family residential. Any type of substation, whether it would be a brand new substation, requires a conditional use in all of our zoning classifications. So they would have to do some type of a zoning action for this expansion anyway. What they're looking to do is modify some development standards regarding landscaping, as well as allowing a fence or wall to be within building setbacks, and other things that are identified in the PUD text that you see on this page of your packet. Another one is to allow an all-weather service to be used on the inside as opposed to straight paving with like a monolithic surface, which would be concrete or asphalt. Overall, staff is recommending approval. One of the major things that we really looked at with this one is requiring that the fence or wall around it meet the screening standards. It just wasn't clear in the PUD language, so that's why the red text is there regarding screening to make sure it complies with our screening standards of the Unified Zoning Code. We're okay with an all-weather surface. Aggregate surface actually helps with runoff, that the space within the substation underneath your equipment can actually absorb water and not have to have it run off. And then something that was proposed by the applicant that staff is okay at this location is that it does not adhere to the landscape ordinance. In the past, we've really looked at this. The purpose of the landscape ordinance isn't necessarily to hide things, but when you have a screening wall or fence around something, that can just be a big blocky structure that landscaping around that can actually break up and make visually appealing. Evergy typically does not like to install landscaping around their structures to help keep critters out, possibly help not promote other human individuals from possibly trying to get over the fence or promote vegetation outgrowing and interfering with the lines. The landscape ordinance does allow them to customize their landscaping, to possibly minimize some of that thing. So in the past, we have recommended that some landscaping be installed. But at this location, the entirety of the substation is essentially internal to this site. It's behind everybody's backyards, and most of those properties already have fences anyway. And the only place you're going to be seeing any of it is through Second Street, which the fact that they're actually installing a screening wall is going to be improving, or screening fence is going to be improving the visual view of it anyway, than to provide landscaping around the outside of it when it's kind of behind everybody's backyards anyway, just didn't seem worthwhile at this location. Typically, we've done it in other locations that are a lot more visible. This one's not really as visible. This is very internal to the whole location. So on this particular one, staff was okay with that, and we recommended approval with that not being included. This went to Planning Commission on the 24th. It did not have any public opposition. The Planning Commission recommended approval unanimously, subject to the conditions and these text that's in your staff report, which was amenable by the applicant as well. We did not actually have to hear the case because the Planning Commission recommended approval. They didn't want to hear it. The applicant was amenable to the staff recommendation, and there was no public comment. So with that, I can stand for any questions from you.
Are there any questions from the board? Are there any questions from the audience? Okay. So do we have any?
I would move we adopt the staff recommendation and approve with conditions.
Second.
Okay, all four say aye. All opposed, same sign. Next,
Yep. All right, 35.
we're gonna hear zone 2025, 35. Name.
Presenter, I will be, all right. Again, Philip Zevenbergen for the record, Planning Department. Zone 2535 is a zone change request near Central and Ridge Road. You can see that the subject property is kind of internal to the intersection, not completely visible from many locations other than looking through properties. There's a zone change request from limited commercial to general commercial. Limited commercial is the red that you see on this zoning map. Anything in pink is general commercial. So there's a couple instances of it here. But generally, like most. The library's gonna close.
You're gonna have to.
Attention, I can do that. Don't tempt me. The purpose before this request is this was actually turned in on a complaint for outdoor storage as a primary use. The applicant is storing siding materials and would like to continue to store fencing, decking, and siding materials on site. Outdoor storage as a primary use is not allowed in limited commercial. Outdoor storage accessory to uses is allowed in limited commercial. Like if you think of Lowe's or Home Depot or something like that, you know, they have things outside, but if it's storage for storage sake outside, you need to get up to general commercial before you can do that. The staff report goes over the differences between the zoning districts and development standards. Not too much of a change in those. Screening standards stay the same. There is no landscaping requirement on this one because all the properties surrounding it are commercially zoned. With reviewing this, staff is recommending a protective overlay. Let me go up there so we can look at it. Since the applicant is looking to only use this property for one use, that would be allowed in general commercial, and that's the outdoor storage as a primary use. Staff felt that it was appropriate to essentially restrict everything on it back to limited commercial, except for that one use, and that's what a protective overlay does. The zoning map will show general commercial zoning, but it will say PO 457 if that's how it's approved. And essentially it would create these conditions on there that it would be all uses permitted by right in limited commercial, which it is now, in addition to the one use, the outdoor storage as allowed in general commercial, so that you're not getting a much wider variety of commercial uses when there is a residential property next door, which are apartments. Even though the apartments are in commercial zoning, they are very well established and there are still residential uses. And general commercial does allow for much higher intensity commercial uses than limited commercial does. Same thing with all the development standards would be back to limited commercial. Signage would be per limited commercial. And then one other thing with the residential property to the west, these apartments here, staff is recommending that though not required by code because it's two limited commercial properties, that a screening fence be put up on the west side of the property line so that those who live in the apartments who are most visible to these would have at least some ground level screening between the two properties. So that as a review, the protective overlay is additional regulations on there. It would be general commercial and his use would come into compliance. It would then essentially restrict everything back to limited commercial and it essentially functions as it does today with the addition of the screening fence. I'll briefly go over the supplementary use regulations that we mentioned here. They're standard per the code anyway. We often kind of get redundant with those in protective overlays, just so that it stays on the forefront of people's mind of what that means. Essentially, the outdoor storage of baling or junk scrap paper, bottles, rags, and similar materials is not allowed within the limited commercial through the limited industrial district. So that would include general commercial as well. So that's just more of a reminder to the applicant, and that's why we get redundant by putting it in there. But that's standard per the code that if you are storing outdoor, that you're not storing junk, that you're not storing scrap, that essentially it helps keep it a little bit more tidy. So this has not been to planning commission. It goes on August 14th. So we have next week. So you guys are hearing this one first. So we don't have necessarily any information from them. My understanding that we have not heard from anybody from the public on this at the time that we've produced the staff report. Again, because you guys are hearing it early, we could possibly hear something by the time we get to planning commission a week from Thursday. So there's still more time when it comes for that. So as the time that we sent this to Teresa last week, we haven't heard anything. So with that, I can stand for any questions.
So this is coming about because of a notice of violation.
Correct.
Is the notice of violation like a public complaint? Is that?
My understanding is a complaint was filed and then a zoning enforcement went out there, verified that they are storing outdoors. Was not in compliance with limited commercial zoning. So then they sent a letter to the property owner and the response was to submit an application to attempt getting it rezoned as a way to come into compliance and address the notice of violation.
Are there any other questions from the board? Opening it up, are there any questions?
Who owns the property? I mean, is this just citing for the apartment complex near there and it's the owner of the apartment complex who's
Are
leaving
you
it there?
are you the applicant, sir?
Yeah.
Would you like to get up and?
My name is Blake Schleier. I'm the applicant agent for this zone change. I own ICT Building Solutions here at Central and Ridge. We're in a little strip mall there. We actually sell to the public siding and trim, panel sheet goods. So we don't have that big of a building or a big garage over there. So we're kind of just selling it out of the lot. 100% I'd like to do the screening around it. Kind of keep some of the traffic from cutting through our lot. And also we've had a decent amount of theft over there since we've been there in the last 2.5 years. Our goal is not to trash the corner over there. Our goal is to bring that corner up. Central and Ridge historically has kind of been the armpit of the west side of town, especially that location right over there. And we are, we're doing our best to kind of get that fixed on that side of town. We're bringing quite a few people from the east side. We've had a lot of draw from outlying cities to come buy some of our product up there. So I was kind of conflicted when I went to pull this zoning change because to me, storage You know, we're putting our own material there and we're waiting to go use it, but all of our, it's more of a retail setting, I guess, what I'm trying to get at. SCHLYDR. Yes.
Just by the photo, it looks like all the materials being stored outside.
We have a full, open to public showroom inside where we sell flooring inside, we sell flooring and carpet. We have tile in there. It's just our exterior building products, you know, they can get rained on, they can get snowed on. So yeah, we're storing those outside, for sale.
Good question. They are limited commercial. They will stay at limited commercial except for this one issue of storage, which they will then be general commercial, but only for the storage.
If approved with the protective overlay, the zoning will go to general commercial, but this protective overlay limits how much of general commercial can happen. Essentially, it functions as limited commercial. Yep. And I'll point out on the map here, my understanding is that you guys are in this strip center just directly south. Yep. So they also own this property and that's how they access their site. And so this is just adjacent to their property.
Are there any other questions from the board? Then I'll move back to. Are there any questions? Seeing none. The recommended action is approval with protective overlay 457. Do I have any motions or?
I'll make a motion to accept, the recommended zone change with the recommendation of really about that.
Second.
Okay, all in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed, same sign. Okay, thank you. We're gonna move on to the next zone 2025-36. Again, Philip.
Yes, ma'am. Okay. Again, for the record, Philip Zevenbergen with the planning department. Zone 2536 is at the northwest corner of West Maple and South 135th Street West. Property is zoned general office with protective overlay number 1. It literally was the first one. We are now at 457. They are requesting to go to limited commercial with an amended protective overlay number 1. You can see on the zoning map that all the hard corners of this intersection are limited commercial, except for this one. Most of them have some type of additional restrictions to them. The property to the southwest is in a community unit plan. The property to the southeast is also in a community unit plan. And the property on the northeast has a protective overlay as well. And so the applicant, when they submitted their application, they submitted an amended protective overlay with the understanding that additional regulations kind of seem to be the thing for commercial properties on this corner, and they wanted to stay generally in conformance and in character with that level instead of having straight up limited commercial. That would be out of character with the other properties around it. The current protective overlay talks about freestanding signs being monument. Those are basically the ones that are like small brick walls. Or that they, instead of just having 2 poles or a pole holding them up, they're like a whole monument going up. They're generally more visually appealing than just a pole sign. Light poles would be limited to a maximum height of 14 feet. That's actually less than what code requires. Has specifics about backlit for building lighting. It would actually increase the landscaping to 1.5 times the code. And that it actually would have an architectural control. So this is the existing protective overlay. They proposed amending it, 1, requiring some exceptions to the limited commercial zoning district. So to allow limited commercial uses except for service stations, car washes, adult entertainment establishments, group homes, group residences, halfway houses, correctional placement residences, private clubs, taverns and drinking establishments. The one thing it does allow is it clarifies really that restaurants can serve liquor. So instead you can't have a bar, but if you have a restaurant that serves liquor, essentially your food sales are 50% or more and it's considered a restaurant. So clarifies that would be allowed. It mimics to say that all freestanding signs are monuments. Signs are limited to 20 feet in height and 108 square feet in size. That's no greater than what the code would require for, or would allow for the limited commercial district. Light poles would be 14 feet in height. That matches the original. It would downgrade the landscaping to just the standard of the landscape ordinance instead of 1.5 times. There's already existing landscaping on the site. And being the hard corner, you're really only going to find landscaping along the front, and you're really looking at a difference of maybe 4 trees along the front instead of 5. So it's not too much of a difference considering the landscaping that's already there. And especially in the conditions that we're in, we're already having to be modifying whether or not landscaping can be planted right now. So they had a architectural control in there as well. Put in a provision that things could be administratively adjusted as long as they meet the ability to do so. That's pretty standard. And then putting a height restriction of 35 feet or 2 stories, which is significantly less tall than what limited commercial would allow anyway. So a couple of things for staff recommendation. Staff is okay with the less requirement for the landscaping. Again, when it comes down to 1.5 times along a street frontage, you're not really looking at gaining or losing too much difference in landscaping for probably anybody to notice. And when it comes to the architectural requirement, staff actually recommends that be taken out. Right now, the property is built with 1 building. And so unless they're looking at scraping the site and starting over, even if they do that, the architecture only applies within the site. So if you have 2 buildings, you just have to have 2 buildings that look like each other. They don't have to look like the buildings around. They don't have to look like buildings in other shopping centers on the other side of the corner. It is just internal within the site. And when a site is so small, one, you already have 1 building. So if somebody just occupies that building, it kind of doesn't matter. If they scrape the site and build 2 buildings or 3 small buildings or something, they're all just have to internally kind of share architecture, and that doesn't necessarily speak to what's going on around it either. And we've been finding that this coming into being a zoning enforcement thing, it's a very subjective type of rule that is becoming a little bit more problematic. They were written in a long time ago, and we're kind of shifting to not necessarily making them a zoning thing. If the property owner wants to require them privately, that's totally up to them. They can definitely do that. But we're kind of starting to shift and take them out of zoning requirements because it is a very subjective rule, unless you really get into the nitty-gritty of what exactly the buildings have to look like. So using language like similar or uniform or this, like it still becomes subjective of who's actually just doing the review and how the buildings look like each other. So we're actually recommending that proposed provision not be included. Don't necessarily know the intended use on the site. There are no screening requirements because the 2 property lines that would have screening are general office and limited commercial. As you can see, the character of the area is predominantly commercially developed. You do have some residential as you get a little bit farther away from the intersection. So overall, staff is recommending approval. Again, this one will also go to Planning Commission on August 14th. At the time that we sent the staff report to Teresa last week, we hadn't heard from anybody. So our recommendation is for this amended protective overlay on the recommendation page, which keeps the use restrictions. It keeps the monument style signs with the height and area, the light pole limits. We agree that the landscaping can just be per the landscape code. Agree with the administrative adjustment that just cites the code and what they're allowed to do anyway. And then the height restriction to 35 feet, but it would take out the architectural control. The applicant, from my understanding, is amenable to these. We do have Mr. Ferris here. He's the agent for the applicant. If you have any questions for him, and I can stand if you have any questions for me. Yes, sir.
This the Ascension.
Yes, sir.
And they want to sell it.
Yes, it's the former Ascension Clinic. Yeah.
Are there any other questions from the board? No. Okay, I'll open it up. Are there any questions? in the audience? Hearing none, the recommended action is approval. Anyone have any?
Make a motion that we approve with the amended technical ruling number one.
All in favor, say aye. All opposed, same sign. Okay. Okay. We're adjourned. Thank you all.
That's the meters. Third and second.
That's very active.